Hi everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Claire Alton. I work for FOS and as a coordinator for CMP. And today I am very thrilled to welcome Cleo Graff, who is the Supreme Commander of the SMART-EarthRanger Conservation Alliance. And there are also some other folks on the call today, including uh, Tom Bruce is here, as well as Callum Ryan, who are both members of SERCA and will be around to help field some of the questions that we might have during the session. In terms of the agenda for the session, we're going to start off with Cleo, who will present on the SERCA vision. And then next, what I'll do is I'll run through the SMART approach to adaptive management. And then really importantly, we'd like to hear from you. So we've got a few minutes to sort of gather your thoughts and inputs and address any questions you might have. Over the next couple of months, it's quite important that we, the SERCA and the conservation standards communities, are working on the development of a joint theory of change. And hopefully this will guide some of our collaboration going forward and our work together. And the input you provide during this session today will help inform that process. So we'd really like to hear from you. And please think about that as we sort of move through these presentations. So Cleo, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Claire. I'm glad you used my aspirational title. Can you see the right screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to have this opportunity to talk about SERCA. As Claire said, my name's Cleo Graff. I am the Executive Director, sadly not Supreme Commander yet. I'm working on it. My background is in ecology. I've spent the last 26 years living in East and Southern Africa, doing all kinds of roles in protected areas and beyond, and been a user of SMART and a trainer of EarthRanger for some of that time, and felt really passionately that SMART and EarthRanger would be better together. So that's been one of my missions since I joined the SMART Partnership in 2024. And we are now working together. So this is our opportunity to tell you about that. So what is it that we're trying to do? So the SERCA partnership, the SMART-EarthRanger Conservation Alliance, it's two softwares that are coming together, but our mission is not to develop software. Our mission is to try and support management effectiveness of protected and conserved and other areas. I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody on this call, that we're charging towards the whole 2030, 30 by 30 situation. We are having more and more protected areas, but whether those are being effectively managed or not is questionable. Probably not so much, or not, at least not anywhere near as much as we would like that to be. And one of the things that we, as the SERCA partnership, would love to see more of is that this management is informed by data-driven decisions. These decisions need to be made often in remote areas, under high pressure circumstances, and with really limited resources. So we as a partnership are wondering or planning, thinking about how we can improve that. And I think as we speak with Claire and talk to you all later, it'd be great to get your thoughts to see how we can strengthen the outcomes of conservation efforts together. So the vision is really simple. It's better decisions and better outcomes at scale. It's really easy to say, not so easy to do. As I said, we really want to try and inform decision making by offering a place for collecting data, being able to analyze and visualize that data in the long term and in real time. And we hope that by having standardized data collection available, decisions could be made in part of this adaptive management cycle that you guys have developed and work on so well. But technology only strengthens that kind of cycle if it sort of simplifies the world and doesn't complicate things. We don't want the technology to drive how things are are done. And I know certainly in a lot of my career, it's been, oh, we want to use this drone or we want to use this shiny thing because it looks nice. And it's not so much what does it do? Yeah, but it looks nice. So we're very aware of that as technology developers, and we really want to make sure that the technology simplifies things and doesn't distract people and help to improve decision quality. Obviously, and I'm really sorry if I'm telling you guys how to suck eggs, but obviously, management effectiveness isn't just about data collection. You need really clear objectives, and Muradi does that so beautifully. But if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then collecting information doesn't do very much for you. It's really important that the data that you collect talks directly to those objectives once you've put them out. And it's really important to know if you take action, is that action doing what you hoped it would do? Is it working a little bit or a lot or not at all? And then how do you decide what do you do next? What do you change? What do you stop? What do you reinforce? And then obviously repeating the cycle, there you've got your adaptive management happening. We know from our many years, 15 years of SMART and 10 years of EarthRanger, that a lot of people collect information, but finding case studies, finding places where that's really properly used in a cycle is really much harder to do, to see, to find those stories. So how can we, when we build this technology, support this entire cycle and not just distract with sexy screens where people can see stuff moving around? We have seen that sometimes technology makes it harder. One of the ways it can make it harder is if you've got lots of different systems and you're having to replicate things within those systems, you're having to collect things two or three times, you're trying to do workarounds for the information from one system to speak to another system. You lose power in your data when they don't directly relate to each other and you're trying to compare apples and pears or apples and oranges. And when the teams spend more time trying to deal with that duplication or trying to deal with that integration rather than actually being able to act on the information that they get and make decisions. So any individual tool by itself can be an amazing tool, but once you start to look at the entire system, if they don't talk to each other, you've got operational friction, which is a distraction and not a help. So again, we want to try and reduce some of that friction and not add to it. So like I say, SMART has been going for 15 years. It was um, made to fill a gap. And like the Conservation Measures Partnership, SMART is a partnership of 8 NGOs who were all trying to fill the same gap and decided that they were better together. Rather than put their resources into each of their own systems, they put it together into one. Um, it's now being used at over 1,500 sites in more than 90 countries. More than 100 countries, actually. And what its focus has been is long-term management. So it's really good for observational data collection for rangers or community members or whomever going out and collecting information. 10 years ago, EarthRanger started, and in those 10 years, they've got to 900 sites. And they've managed to integrate all sorts of other devices into their very awesome real world data collection, data visualization platform. So you can see not only the rangers or the people going out, but you can see your vehicles, you can see your collared animals, you can see your fences, you can see your planes, your drones, whatever it is, see it all in one place. And from there, you can look and see what's happening. There's been a lot of talk in the conservation community. We hear quite often, oh, I use SMART. SMART's the best. Don't like EarthRanger. Or EarthRanger people who say, but EarthRanger is amazing and SMART doesn't do this, and I can't see what's going on with my teams in SMART. But actually, they're really, really complementary. And one of the sort of side effects of having these two tools in terms of distraction is kind of, well, which one's better? And we're hearing time and time again, and in my previous job at the Southern African Wildlife College, one of the questions that we've been asked all the time is which one do we use? Like, well, kind of both. Depends what you want to do and what your circumstances are. They both obviously did really well over the last decade and so. but they were starting to converge in their evolution. And so there's starting to be more and more overlap. So, as well as having to duplicate your efforts and find workarounds to get the data to talk to each other, they were also starting to kind of reinvent the wheel a bit, which in a resource constrained sector like conservation is never ideal. I just put this up. This is actually an example that is from WCS in Colombia, where they've been using SMART and EarthRanger because, like I said, they've been really complementary to each other. They use EarthRanger for its online capabilities and its real-time measures, and they can import into that some of these big data systems like Global Forest Watch and firms. And they use SMART for going out and collecting observations, and then between Smart Connect and EarthRanger, bringing them back together into one place. But that takes a lot of fiddling to get those things to work really well together. And that's the kind of distraction that we really don't want to see people having to put their effort into that instead of the actual business of conservation. So in October last year at the World Conservation Congress, we announced that we were going to join together. So instead of the SMART partnership, which was 8 partners, we are now, as you guys have said, the SMART-EarthRanger Conservation Alliance. So EarthRanger have joined the partnership, now alliance, um, as an equal member. And this is not about consolidating the Smart and EarthRanger brands. It's not about better, sexier technology. It's about trying to make things simpler on the ground and trying to think through how can we really start to have the kind of impact in conservation that we all set out to do. We want to get those complementary aspects together in one place. We want to align the governance so that we're sort of all speaking with one voice and there's no confusing which thing should I use, and pool our resources. I think it's safe to say, or accurate to say, that the EarthRanger team are amazing software development team who've learned a huge amount about conservation, and the Smart Partnership are an amazing conservation team who've learned a lot about technology. And those two kind of groundings are shown in the tools and the approaches. And we definitely want to make the most of both of those experiences. So bringing those experiences together means that we're used at more than 2,000 sites in 100 different countries, with 31 countries and rapidly increasing using us across the entire country in a nationwide deployment. That 2,000 sites gives us a huge amount of experience and all different contexts to learn from and background. So, as well as the time that we've been going, we are both user-led and user-driven. Um, so, that experience across all of those sites across the world is what helps design user-friendly tools. And we've seen that happen. We've seen what happens when the tech works, and we've seen what happens when the tech doesn't work. And now putting our resources together hopefully makes everything a lot smoother. And we want to make sure that that experience helps us to design workflows that encourage critical thinking, that encourage reflection on data, that encourage thinking about what kind of information you want to collect to really inform the outputs and outcomes that you're looking at. So in the SERCA partnership, the capacity part and the impact part isn't an add-on, it's really the approach. As I said, what we're trying to do is try and improve management effectiveness and not just build technology. That's just one of the ways to get there. It's just a really nice map of lots of dots of where everything's being used. I think it's very cool. And this global network of conservationists who are all really generous with their time and experience and let us learn from those lessons is just mind-blowing to me, and one of the reasons why this job is awesome. So, what does the integration mean in real terms for SERCA? It means that we can share the workflow smoothly across the systems, no more fiddly workarounds. It means that you're not comparing apples and pears and losing power of the data in that kind of weird, almost comparison. It means that you can do analysis across many more different kinds of data because you've got the integration power of EarthRanger and the long-term analysis of SMART. But also for that adaptive management piece and the capacity piece, it means we're only training on one thing. And it means we can support the use of those tools across that one thing. We're not having to train people how to kind of fix and work around and use it like this and this one and that and the other one. So it's not, our goal is not a bigger platform. It's about the platform, the tools that we have being used more effectively, a simpler operational reality for conservation. Um, as I've said, this is about trying to help management effectiveness at scale. And it's not about counting sites, it's about all the sites that use it far more effectively than we've been able to see so far. And that requires really sustained support. And that's one of the things that I really value in this strategic partnership with CMP and CCNet. I think that between us, our networks can really help with that support and the learning that needs to happen and can be transferred. So, if we do what we really hope that we're going to do, what changes? What are the things that we really want to see? So we hope that the decision qualities improve and the information is more coherent. And it isn't just your anti-poaching units or it isn't just your community outreach, but this is across the board. So you start to get a much more holistic picture. We hope that there's much less time spent fiddling around with these different bits of tech so that there's more time to look at what the information is telling you and think about what kind of information you want and how you could get it. We hope that the decisions can be made more quickly. We've got lots of examples of where being able to see things in real time has had massive and life-saving impacts all over the place. So the goal isn't to get more information, certainly not. We see so much information being collected and not being used, but it's better decision making. With that reduced duplication, we hope that the daily operations become smoother. Um, we know that people's time is scarce in the field and that a lot of people go into conservation because they're not really techies at heart. They like being out in the bush and being able to see and feel and see how things are going. So being able to kind of smooth things along means people can do more of that and less time swearing at their computer and trying to throw it out the window. As I mentioned earlier, being able to integrate all kinds of different sensors and see things in real time means that you can keep people safer. And that's one of the things that I think for me as a woman in conservation is really important because the safety barrier is one of those less visible things that drive some of the kind of mismatch of men and women in conservation. And if we can make things safer, then we can also start to build more equality. And we can also get more operational clarity as things move forward. Just a quick example around vultures. Um, there was a poisoning event in one African country. The country wasn't using EarthRanger, but across the border they were using EarthRanger. And unfortunately, the the country that wasn't using EarthRanger didn't get to the site quickly enough. So a bunch of vultures, that's a technical term, 32, um, unfortunately died, and so did a whole load of other predators. If we can get national adoptions where governments are talking to each other and seeing this stuff in real time, then we can start to really address some of these like really big um, landscape scale issues. I'm just going to say it again, it's not about the technology. We know from research that you can make amazing technology, but it doesn't have the kind of outcomes you'd hope it would have. So we need tools that are simple to use, but we need to embed that tool use into management cycles. And we need to support people into thinking about how they deploy and use those tools in the most efficient way for them, but also the most impactful way for the interventions and the actions that they're taking. For us, counting sites is not what we're talking about with adoption. It's not that one-off, okay, they're installed now. It's about helping people think about that installation, helping people develop how they use it, and helping people think through these cycles. Um, we are aware that because there are so many people using our tool, this brings in a lot of responsibility. And one of the reasons that coming together is better because it means that we don't dilute the impact through fragmentation. It means that we can strengthen the coherence across these sites. It means we can learn from each other. We're going to focus a lot on national adoptions because we've seen that there's a lot of churn in the conservation sector on the ground. People move, you train people, they get more opportunities, which is amazing and a great outcome of that training, but then you lose those skills and that institutional knowledge. If you've got the same tools being used across the entire landscape, then those skills go with the people when they move. Um, and it means that countries can talk to each other, can compare information. It means that we can get better reporting up into the global reporting mechanisms, which I think for those 30 by 30 goals that we're all aiming for and striving for is going to be super important too. Um, so when we talk about scaling, it means that we want to try and increase the strength or not fragment and dilute it. Come back to our ambition, our simple ambition, so easy to say, not so easy to do. We want better decisions that are easier to get to. We want to reduce the friction in the adaptive management cycle. We want to increase coherence across the different sites that are collecting information, increase the visibility of people doing the work on the ground, of communities collecting information around the place, and increase clarity around how that information is collected and then used. Um, and so that the conservation practitioners can see how their actions are making a difference, and funders can see how their actions are making a difference, and governments can see how their actions are making a difference. And we start to get much better support for conservation globally. Um, SERCA is, as I said, it's an alliance. We are very open to other people joining us in our alliance and helping to strengthen it, to bring different aspects to our current sort of fields of expertise. It's another great reason why it's an awesome opportunity to have a strategic partnership with you guys. Um, and yeah, this is not an endpoint. This is the beginning, as we see it, of trying to simplify things and get more effective and efficient conservation efforts. So just a few practical notes for those of you who use SMART and or EarthRanger, because this is the question that we get most, and feel free to ask me questions in a moment. But this is how we see things. So at the moment, there's EarthRanger, which is used on the web. It's only an online platform. So if you have connectivity, it's awesome. If you don't, you can't use it. And then at the same time, you've got Smart, which you can use offline on your desktop or through Smart Connect if there is connectivity wherever you are. And then we have two mobile apps that can be used on phones and other devices. There's Smart Mobile and EarthRanger Mobile. As we move towards SERCA, EarthRanger is going to become SERCA Web, the online version. And that's going to be the place that if there is connectivity, even if it's not constant, we're going to encourage most people to go. That's where the functionality will be strongest and best because of that power of the web and cloud computing and all the rest of it. Smart is going to be rebuilt into SERCA Desktop, which means we will still have the ability for people who are in completely disconnected environments to be able to use these tools. The added benefit means that if you're in a semi-connected environment, you can use SERCA Web, the star of the show most of the time, but if you find yourself disconnected, you can still work through SERCA Desktop. So for EarthRanger users, some of the branding's going to change, but other than that, you carry on business as usual. You're just going to get more functions. And there are some already. The EarthRanger team are amazing at how quickly they work. We're closing some of the biggest functional gaps that our users have told us are most priority around patrol planning and some of the other really key elements of SMART. And we hope that in about 9 months, towards the end of the year, maybe early next year, that EarthRanger will be then SERCA Web with those biggest functional gaps between SMART and EarthRanger closed. For SMART users, it is a bit of a different story because SMART is going to eventually um, stop being supported. Certainly not anytime soon. We're aware that training on new tools is a huge lift. And we know that training teams is expensive and it's hard to get to and it's difficult. One of the ways that we're going to try and support people through this is build various, what I'm calling in my technical language, off ramps. So as the gaps close between SMART and SERCA Web, there'll be times when groups of users may be ready to move. So they may be connected, but one particular SMART function is really important to them. Maybe it's patrol planning, in which case you can move really soon. Maybe it's using smart surveys or smart patrol profiles, which will be a bit later in the development. So you might want to hang on a bit longer in the smart space until those gaps are closed and SERCA desktop is available if you're completely disconnected. And the two mobile apps, we're still looking at those, but they will become one mobile app. We are wondering whether we can have two different views because we're aware that training for particularly the ranger teams is the biggest lift. It's the biggest number of users. It's the least well-resourced group of people. It's the least well-trained generally, or most kind of least access to education. So we're still looking to see how we can make that as painless as possible. But this is the vision. Timelines are quite difficult. Like I said, we're hoping to have SERCA Web launched towards the end of this year or early next year. SERCA Desktop is going to take us a bit longer because it is a complete rebuild of Smart, and the mobile, I think, will come along quite quickly. But I am not the tech team, and I don't want to make any promises on their behalf because they'll shout at me. The ultimate aim, though, when these things are all together, is that for a user, they will all look and feel like one system. So you'll have a single sign-on, you'll learn to use just one thing in the same way, whether you're disconnected or connected. So less remembering passwords, which I feel is a huge bonus, and an easier training lift. These are the 9 partners that are making this possible. It's amazing to be able to work with them and their reach across the world and their resources, both intellectually and financially and otherwise. As I've said, we're open to other organizations joining the Alliance. Feel free to talk to me about that. And you are welcome to join our mission and sign up to the beta version at serca.org. You can scan the QR code where you'll get the information as we have it. You'll get the developments as they come and can help us shape the new development of those tools. That's it for me, Claire. Over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cleo. Just as a just to mention, there will be a little bit of time to ask questions after this next quick presentation, and then we've also got a Miro board to gather additional thoughts and insights from all of you. So I'm going to launch us straight into the next presentation. It won't be long. What we really want to talk about here is the SMART approach to adaptive management and talk a little bit about how the conservation standards itself fits into this big picture with regards to SERCA. As you know, there are many adaptations of the conservation standards, and those exist for varying audiences or varying contexts. So when the team came together to design the SMART approach to adaptive management, we really wanted to build off the principles and practices of the conservation standards It's obviously been around for some time, and a lot of work has been going into it. So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel when thinking about how does SMART think about adaptive management. The disclaimer here is that the SMART approach to adaptive management manual was written mostly prior to the merger between SMART and EarthRanger, but it's obviously still applicable very much to SERCA as an alliance. So as the conservation standards, as you all know, is a 5-step adaptive management cycle. The SMART approach to adaptive management similarly is a 5-step adaptive management cycle, very much built off the principles and practices of adaptive management, but designed very clearly for SMART and SERCA practitioners. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is definitely not talk to you about what the conservation standards is, because you all know that. What I'm going to talk about is really the differences between the conservation standards and what we're seeing within the SMART approach to adaptive management. So this guidance manual is now available on the SMART website, so you can download it. And it was really a collaborative process with regards to its development between both CMP and SERCA. So when we think about step 1 within the conservation standards, as you all know, we're thinking about things like defining our scope, our values, prioritizing and identifying threats, developing a situation analysis. The key thing that we want to bring in from the SERCA perspective here is that the manual itself was written with the target audience being protected and conserved area management. So it's really designed for that particular context and for that target audience. Obviously, it's applicable to any site or system or team using SERCA tools. However, we really have this lens focused directly on protected and conserved area managers. And there is a sort of case study that runs throughout the manual, which is a sort of protected area example. The key thing about step 1 is that what we really wanted to think about is obviously teams are probably have a whole bunch of data that they've already gone about collecting and using to build a bit of a knowledge base. And the idea here is that we're actually using that evidence collected through SERCA tools and technologies to help us define that situation and help us to build that model. Step 2 obviously is all about selecting your strategic actions, building your results chains, identifying indicators, objectives, goals, consolidating all of that into some sort of plan. But with the SERCA lens, what we really want to think about here is that we want data-driven indicators. We want to very carefully select those measurement methods that are aligned with and compatible with the SERCA software. Obviously, we may need to use additional tools as well, but here we want to really think about those standard operating procedures, those monitoring protocols, and building them in terms of consistency to essentially align the strategic plan with our circle. Step 3 is the fun part, right? So we actually getting out into the field, we're developing and implementing our work plans, our monitoring plans, and we're reporting on progress as we go. Here we really need to think about setting up the SERCA system. So a major additional requirement here is to configure the SERCA hardware and software. So thinking about your data models, your queries, and your report templates to align these things to the site management plan before action begins. I'll talk about this more in a minute, but within step 3, we've got this component around real-time tactical response. So those rapid decisions you're making in the field, responding to incidents as and when they crop up. So things like fire or poacher incursions or flood events that are taking place that you don't have control over and you need to respond to instantly. So I'll talk more about this in a second, but this is obviously happening during step 3. In step 4, pretty similar to what we've got in the conservation standards, you're analyzing that data, you're evaluating progress, and you're adapting and refining your actions. Here, what we really want to think about is that teams are leveraging those automated software features that are produced within the SERCA toolset to think about looking at things like activity trends and transforming that raw field data into their intuitive reports and dashboards so that you can visualize this data for effective decision making. And a key thing here is that we really want to come back. So during that sort of pause and reflect process, we also want to come back and actually look at our data model and look at the maintenance that might be required as a team after sort of 6 months or a year of operating. Do we need to think about how we are collecting data through these data models and through these systems? Maybe we need to refine and think about our system setup based on the feedback coming in from our team. So really building in the adaptive management element of the data model and maintenance itself. So just going back to that differentiation here between tactical response and strategic response. The tactical response is the stuff that happens during step 3, right? So this is your immediate on-the-ground adjustments that is based on the real-time data that's coming from your SERCA tool sets. So it's around responding to urgent challenges or opportunities that are happening live in the field. Things like rerouting a patrol in response to a poacher incursion, for example. So here we're thinking about dynamic operational decisions that work within the context of the existing management plan. Step 3. The strategic response happens within step 4. So that happens within your sort of pause and reflect, your analyze and adapt section. So this is your deliberate structured review process. You're thinking about using your data to inform your decision making and thinking about how you might then go about adapting and improving your theory of change. So the focus here is on making those long-term adjustments. So including changes to your outcomes, your actions, your objectives. So the difference here is pretty clear between your tactical responses happening in step 3. That's a form of adaptive management in and of itself. And then we've got this longer term strategic response taking place in step 4. Finally, step 5, very similar to the CS steps, we're documenting and sharing our lessons learned, and we're promoting that broader learning and that culture of sharing and learning from each other. The SERCA Community Forum is accessible to anyone willing to gain knowledge from others or share information as and when they are learning things. And the SERCA community is really encouraging of teams to add case studies to their resource database so that we can grow in our knowledge and learn from each other. So those are the steps of the sort of conservation standards cycle and how they align closely with the SERCA approach to adaptive management. But many of you might be thinking, how does this relate to Meraki, and what does this actually mean for Meraki as a conservation technology? So what I'd really like to share with you today is that Meraki and SERCA tools are also very complementary. Here you're thinking about moving data from your sort of planning and high-level long-term strategic adaptive management to the on-the-ground field sort of tactical side of things. So when we're thinking about the technology sides of things, here we're thinking about Meraki being really useful and well-developed for that adaptive management planning, longer term strategic plans, monitoring and evaluation plans, work plans, sort of guiding those strategic actions. Whereas where SERCA is really strong is in that real-time, on-the-ground decisions, collecting data in the field, and transferring that into useful information that you can then use to inform decision-making. What we're seeing is it's becoming more and more important for us to be bridging the gap between these two softwares. So particularly factors like indicators and objectives would be really useful to be able to share and transfer between these different tools and technologies. So these conversations are already ongoing. There's some work that a team of people, Xavier, I know, is on the call, Carrie's on the call. So there's a group of people that are already working really hard to design and think about these integrations between these software tools so that we can share data between these platforms. Another important point is that there is a webinar coming up soon, which will talk more about Meraki as a sort of conservation technology and what the integrations are and the development of those integrations between Meraki and other conservation softwares. So that's really exciting and coming up soon. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah,
over?
there's a couple of things in the chat that I'd quite like to answer now, if that's okay. Things I probably should have
Yes,
said in
please.
my presentation.
Go for it.
Um,
Thanks, Claire.
One of them is around security. This is a question that we get asked a lot, and that refers to a bunch of different things. So there's security in terms of moving from either SMART or EarthRanger to SERCA. And then there's security in terms of is your data secure, depending on where it's held and how it's used. So on the first one, this is one of the things that we have promised everybody. There will be no data loss as we transition from Smart and EarthRanger to SERCA. We know it's blood, sweat, and tears, quite literally, to collect all of that information, never mind all the money and everything else that goes into it. So that is super important, and we'll make sure that as things move, you do not lose any data. The second one, the bigger one, is your data safe? And governments often ask us, but where is it kept and how does it work and is it safe? So the data is encrypted when it's stored in the cloud. So in the same way that your bank account and financial information is encrypted and kept safe, we use same or similar systems to keep this data secure. One of the nice things, though, is that if a government has a policy that says that their data can't be stored out of the country, then they can use Circa Desktop and make sure that everything is kept on the desktop. It doesn't need to go anywhere. Um, but one of the things that we find often is that the protocols around how data is collected and entered are actually far more important than where the data is stored. Because, like I say, in the cloud, it's encrypted, the same as all the financial things. But people don't necessarily, the number of times with Smart, when you get it, when you download it from the website, it comes with a default setting of Smart being the conservation area and Smart being the password. And the number of times you get people asking for help and you say, okay, well, I'm going to have to access your thing. What's the username and password? And it's still smart. So those protocols, are not great. Or when it's password 123, something like that. Similarly, if people are using devices and leaving them unlocked or accessible, though those places are actually far more vulnerable to data issues than encrypted data in the cloud. At the same time, we are aware that people are very suspicious of these things, so there are choices of where data, which servers data can be held on. There aren't servers in all the different countries, but there are in many different regions. And so we're really open to talking to sites and users about what best suits them and helping listen to concerns, give information, and make whatever arrangements we possibly can to make those things easier. I hope I answered the questions on security there. Um, One of the other questions in the chat earlier was also around can you have socioeconomic data? So both Smart and EarthRanger currently, and certainly Circa as we go forward, is entirely configurable. It's completely up to you what data you want to collect there. Um, Tom Callum and I were talking about this earlier, the different types of data that people are using. And I love when we travel and we meet people who are doing awesome things and the kind of information that they are collecting. So to give some examples, obviously there's things like ranger data, incursions, or biodiversity measures, things like that, the more obvious stuff. But there's also infrastructure measures, your water and electricity usage around a campus or around a site, where you can see immediately when you've got a leak or a short and deal with it and save yourself a whole load of money. There's also sites where it's being used for clinic visits, for instance, for family of rangers who need lifts to the local clinic, and they can report that on their devices. And loads of others. There's some amazing community groups doing super cool stuff, and I would encourage you to look at the case studies if you're interested. And if you think you've got something original that's being done, we'd love to hear about it. We love those stories so much. Xavier's, who's on the call, is doing some fabulous stuff in Australia, and his work's really worth looking at for sure. as is so many others.
Coming up soon in a future webinar. Any questions from anyone? Anyone want to unmute and ask a question directly? If not, Carrie, Brian, anything else from you guys you want to add from a Marathi perspective?
I'll just say we're pretty excited about and Brian's making MT and we're making excellent progress on this. We're really excited about the ability to connect Marathi with all of these other systems. So, and thrilled to see people signing up for that working group. So I'll turn it over to Brian for any technical details. All right.
Yes, we're also looking very carefully at how we might incorporate the new crop of AI agents into this process to ease it. So good discussions at a high level on that with some potential working groups around that as well coming up. So if interested, make a note of that as well.
Fantastic. Tom, Callum, Jordan, anything else from the SERCA team you guys want to add?
I guess there seems to be quite a lot of questions around data analysis, summarizing and visualization coming up in the Miro board. And I want to say it's something as the SERCA community that we're thinking about the best ways that we can actually start to introduce more robust analysis and visualizations into the process in a user-friendly way. So it takes some of that heavy lifting of coding and introducing things using Ecoscope, where you can look at other people's workflows, what they output, and integrate that into your system in a much more easy and robust way. So it's definitely at the forefront of our minds as we're developing this.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can add to that. So with Smart, traditionally, you've had to go through queries and then put things together with logic statements and things. Whereas now with Ecoscope, it's much more of a drag and drop. I want to see this and that like this. So that Jake and his team are developing that really quickly. And every time he shows me something new, I wish I was doing science again. But it's progressing so quickly. There's also been quite a lot of playing with agentic AI, where you can just conversationally ask it what you want it to show you. And the early signs are really good that it brings up amazing dashboards and graphs and charts just using natural language. So I think this space is going to get more and more exciting in terms of easy analysis and therefore exciting results.
I'd also just like to say that I'm looking forward to diving into this Miro board and seeing all these comments. I will be at CCNet Europe, the CCNet Europe rally in April, where we'll keep this conversation going, focusing a lot on the same things. You've got all of our contacts in the meantime if you want to reach out. But for anybody that's there as well, we can dive into this a lot further, and that'd be really good to build out this collaboration.
Brilliant. All right. Jordan?
I was just going to say that we're so excited to be partnering with you all on this, and love your feedback in developing it, right? SERCA is certainly not a one platform to rule them all. It is a foundational tool, and we really look at the promise of driving more interoperability to make things just easier on the ground level. And accelerate the way that people are working to protect our ocean, our planet, not just the terrestrial, but the ocean as well. So, yeah, so please be a part of it, shape it. We're here.
Yeah. Brilliant. Jordan, I absolutely second that from the conservation standard community's perspective. We are absolutely thrilled to be working with you all and SERCA. So thank you so much to all of you for being here. It's been wonderful to hear more about the vision of SERCA. So yeah, huge thank you, especially to Cleo for coming on at 9:10 p.m. So we're really appreciative, and we thank you so much for all of this today. And if you all do have any more questions, feel free to pop them on the Miro board. We'll keep this conversation going. or email us, and we'll make sure that things develop as fast as we can make it happen. It's really exciting.
Thank you. Oh, that's great. I am super excited about this partnership and that the Conservation Measures Partnership has a strategic partnership with SERCA. The alliance sounds like perfect, like it's really needed, and will advance impact and our ability to achieve greater and greater conservation impact, make things simpler for the field teams on the ground. I actually like listening. I'm not a tech person, but listening, I have a list of 25, 26 staff within the International Crane Foundation and our key partners that I'm going to send this recording to. So that's a reminder to those of us on the call where we might not be the people that are directly associated with SMART or EarthRanger or the use of some of these tools. But let's push this announcement about the alliance and the changes and the opportunities out to those staff who are. Great. Anything else that we want to say before we switch to the second part of our call today?
Can I make one more plug? Because I see there's a few people
Absolutely.
in the chat who say they don't know about Smart EarthRanger. I mean, really, how would you? But if you happen to not know about us, on both the Smart and EarthRanger websites, which you can access through circa.org, there's free online training for the basics and to just kind of dive in and have a look. So for anybody who wants to just kind of have a look and play for themselves, that is available. And of course, you're more than welcome to message us, and we can include you on trainings as they happen, online courses particularly as they happen, and future learning opportunities. But there's lots you can look at to get started.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cleo. And I see that Jacqueline shared that website. So and we'll probably share it in the follow-up email as well from this call. Great. Thank you so much, the SERCA team that's here. It's great to see everybody and have such a strong partnership.